Yeah, shalom Israel. Before I start, I want to give all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh, Hashem, Yahushai, Baharaka Kadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles in Israel who rule and teach well, to the Akim and the Iris and byways and those pushing videos in truth and sincerity, to the brothers and sisters in the truth. Now, for a very long time, we've had the apostles, those of Great Millstone, and the elders underneath them. We've been telling the people that the mark is referring to, the M.O.T.B is referring to the RFID chip. And then you've had other apostles and elders from other camps, other bodies who have realized that this is the case and are also teaching our people. Now, there's a video I want to play in a second, to show you that, what we've been speaking about is real. The scripture speaks about the mark. Actually, let me quickly read this. This is Revelation 13:16 says, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand, or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name." Like I said, we've been teaching that the mark, going back to the apostles of Great Millstone, the elders under them, and other brothers who subscribe to the understanding. We've been showing you, how this thing can come in place. The system that they're currently laying. You've got the smart cities, the Internet of Things, the digital currencies, central bank digital currencies, the Internet of Bodies. These are all things which are being put in place, so that they can implement their M.O.T.B. Now, what I want to play is this video here. This is a guy, played some of his videos before, and he deals a lot with food, when it comes to food, and he has some very great information. His channel is called Ice Age Farmer. Check him out, subscribe. And this video is called Iran Digital Food Ration Rolls Out Using Biometric IDs Amid Food Riots. And the thing is, we've been saying what the M.O.T.B is, but this guy starts off even showing you that even some of the people then that's not even in the truth know what the mark is. So I just want to play some of this video. Yeah.
My friends, welcome. The mark is here. Iran.
So this is how he starts off. It says, "My friend, the mark is here." What mark is he talking about? Revelation 13:16. Play that again.
My friends, welcome. The mark is here. Iran is set to be the first country to roll out a biometric digital ID needed in order to buy food. Needed in order to eat. Right? Needed.
And this is just the start of things, soon, because at the end of the day, you have higher ups, which you'll mention some a bit later, which are actually behind all of these, so you might see it being Iran now, yeah, but soon, it's just a matter of time before it comes to a city near you.
In order to survive, you must go get your digital ID from government. The same digital ID that central banks are telling us is needed in order to roll out the central bank digital currencies. The same digital ID that the World Economic Forum establishes is at the very crux of this fourth industrial revolution. Yeah, all of that now you need to go get your ID in order to eat. Now, there's some interesting details about the way Iran is implementing this that I want to walk through today, because I think this is a bellwether for how it's going to be rolled out around the rest of the world. And make no mistake, this is food rationing based on your digital ID. So read down here. You're
drinking water before bed burns 3 stone in 2.
These ads.
People are burning.
Able to buy as much bread as you want, but if you want to get the subsidized prices, then you're going to need the ID. Then you'll have access to, quote, a limited amount of bread at subsidized prices. And you can keep buying the rest at market rates if you want, right? You can buy as much bread for $1 million a loaf as you want. But for the 50% of Iran that lives below the poverty line, That's not an option, right? They're
And these are just the start of things, because obviously, as things stands, if you have money, you'll be able to get the bread and all of these things without the mark. But as the scripture says, he calls of all, both small and great, rich and poor. Soon, it will be rolled out to all. And these things are normally passed off as a good idea. Yeah, it's in your interest. And the next thing you know, you're snared.
only option is to go get in line and accept this mark, this digital biometric ID, to which all resources are being tied. Not just bread, but according here, the scheme will later include all goods such as chicken, cheese, vegetable oil, and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
So
and we know that things like your medical records, your banking, all of these things would be accessible via this chip. It will allow you to be able to access these things. This is why these things are being put in place, the digital banking, etc., the Internet of Things, so that when you have this mark, it can allow you to access these things.
this is a pretty big deal. Let's talk about it. I'm Christian, and this is the Ice Age Farmer broadcast. And there's a lot to this story, from the fact that they cut off the internet for regular users, to the fact that there have been already fatal food riots and protests. So let's break it down. Here from Reuters, soaring bread prices spark protests and shop fires in Iran. May 13th, soaring bread prices have triggered protests in which some shops were set on fire, encouraging 22 arrests. The protests were triggered by a cut in subsidies for wheat that caused price hikes as high as 300% for flour-based staples. The inflation rate in Iran is already 40 to 50%, depending on who's counting, and half of 82 million people there are already living below the poverty line. So digging in further, the cut on bread subsidies is something that the Iranian government says we have to do it. We can't just keep subsidizing all bread forever. So what we're going to do now is just subsidize a little bit of bread for everyone that has this ID. Quote, the government will offer citizens digital coupons. That's the way they dress it up. Digital friendly coupons with a smiley face on it that will allow them to access a limited amount of bread at subsidized prices. The rest,
And if you're on the poverty line, these things that's going to allow you to buy food cheaper, a lot of people is going to look to access these, because it's going to quote unquote make your life easier.
will be available at market rates, right? You can buy as much as you want, as long as you pay exorbitant prices for it. As long as you're a millionaire, you can do whatever you want. This scheme will be enforced within 2 months. The scheme will later be expanded to include other goods like chicken, cheese, and vegetable oil, according to officials. Raisi extolled the benefits of reforming these subsidy scheme, finally covering everything from oil to bread. It's many cash-strapped Iranians already rely on this. So what better vector to force you to get your digital ID than with food? The price of wheat on the global market has jumped since the start of the Russian conflict with Ukraine, adding to the cost of subsidies. Of course, that's getting even worse this week as India announces they're going to completely ban all exports of wheat. Putting that aside, this is sent wheat up back again to a fresh high, a multi-decadal record price. And so that's not going to help Iran.
So everything that you're seeing going on, these the Russia and all of these things, right? These are just part and parcel to help allow these things to be put in place.
It's just going to further more of these kinds of conversations and digital rationing of food. So here, Iran has enforced internet shutdowns across the country as citizens are protesting. It's a tiered disconnection, meaning we're going to take down individuals, but if you're a business or a bank or a government, then your internet will continue to work just fine. Don't worry about a thing. In 2 months, citizens will be given digital coupons that will give access to a small number of subsidized bread purchases. Now, you can call it digital coupons all you want. What this describes is limiting people to a small number of bread purchases at affordable prices.
Now, are you able to see how these things that we've been speaking about can come to pass? May have sounded silly at one stage. Oh, they're going to put a chip on you, make you get the M.O.T.B. It's going to be an RFI, so on and so forth. But now you're seeing all how these things can come to pass. And the elder at JMS Fair the Most High said he's done a number of beautiful lessons on this, man. There's really no reason for our people unless you choose to be blinded to realize what's actually happening, man, what we're speaking about, and that it's actually feasible. Now you're seeing it play out on a small level before it becomes large.
Right? It's very clear. They can language it however they want in their corporate government stakeholder nonsense speak. The bottom line is people aren't going to eat unless they go to the government and get these digital biometric cards. It's planning to expand to cover other foods too. Many of Iran's poor can no longer even afford meat or other foods and have all turned to this subsidized bread just to be able to feed themselves and their families.
Yeah, so if you're struggling to eat and they put this thing in place now where it's easier for you to get food at cheaper prices that you'll be able to afford, you can see why a lot of people turn to this.
So this is not an opt-in system, right? It might be dressed up that way, it might be presented that way, but this is telling the people of that country who depend on these bread subsidies that now they need to go sign up for the mark. Let's talk more about this. This is the biometric digital ID that Iran rolled out just last year, actually. It uses a combination of the police database of the national IDs that they already have with a new app that you do like a 10, 15 second.
Try this strange 10 seconds technique.
For all this ad madness, no?
Medications because they
multi-dimensional selfie to get your biometric data inputted, and then they go and match it up with your ID, and then you're good to go. Then you're good to go use your mark to go buy bread from the state. Users' digital ID is stored on your Android or iOS device. Yeah, Google and Apple right there, custodians of the mark. Now, let's step back and bear in mind that this is exactly what the Rockefeller Foundation described in their Resetting the Table report, how we're going to transform the food systems.
And that's what I was talking about. These plans here, you have higher ups that's actually allowing things or making things happen so that these plans of theirs can be put in place. And this is one of them.
As true cost accounting, it is the wet dream of technocrats to just be able to assign arbitrary values instead of letting the market figure things out to achieve the goals they want. They actually put that quite bluntly. To realize these changes, this transformation of the US food system, we need to do some things, including true cost accounting, considering not just real costs of production and distribution, but extended and indirect costs, like, for example, the carbon impact, the cow farts. An example of that, like I said, is the carbon taxes on sheep or on any animals. Here it is in Canada, impacting hog farmers. Now, of course, any farmers are impacted by this. Here's an example here of
Carbon taxes. If I'm not mistaken, I'm sure that COP26, part of the things they were talking about went into that. Another beautiful lesson that the elder at JMS Fair, the Most High, touched on.
how hog prices have been going up directly attributable to that carbon tax. And here it is broken down by animal. So when you see meat prices rising, yeah, there's a lot of reasons for that, but some of them are as simple as the government arbitrarily imposing true cost accounting because they don't want you to eat meat. That's the bottom line here. And it's working. As those prices rise and people can't afford food, then they'll be forced onto these handouts from the government, which are, of course, effectively another thing that the Rockefeller Foundation called for, universal basic income, only disguised as food. Right? They call it nutritional security because food is a human right. So you can see now a lot of the agenda that's described by the Great Reset and the Fourth Industrial Revolution is being wrapped up in assistance to hungry people, because that's how they're ramming this agenda through. And so now you've seen the whole thing, right? We've talked about it for years, but now you've seen we're going to cause a tremendous run up in food prices. When people can't afford to eat, we will offer them food tied to the exact system of slavery that we've been wanting to roll out. This is a classic problem reaction solution, Hegelian dialectic played out using the most potent form of controlling people. As Henry Kissinger said, if you control food, you control people, and that's exactly what they're doing here. I think we're going to keep this as a short video just because this is such a potent thing, but let me also just quickly add that this is already being spec'd out and implemented around the rest of the world, although it hasn't been announced yet. That's the only difference, is Iran is already there telling their people to go get in line for digital ID with your 15 seconds multi-dimensional selfie to get your bread, whereas the rest of the world is all putting the systems in place and waiting until people get pissed off enough.
I'm just going to stop that there, Carl. Sure you get the message of what the crux of this video is. Now, this is Revelation chapter 12 and verse 12. It says, "Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. For the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath." Why? Because he knoweth that he has but a short time. And this is what we're seeing, man. All these things that's implementing that Esau's trying to put in place, the M.O.T.B trying to set up his new world order. As we said today at camp, it's like if you're falling, what you try and do, you try and break your fall. And these are ways of Esau trying to hold on to his kingdom, even though it's crumbling down. Yeah. And who is the crux of this for? Revelation 12 and 17. "And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of the Most High, and have the testimony of Yahweh." Why? Because at the end of the day, us repenting and returning to the Father, now the Father can start to put things in place to bring this kingdom down, to usher in the new kingdom, the kingdom of heaven, which is what Esau doesn't want, man, because when that comes in, that is the end of his kingdom, man. Last precept I just want to bring out, the second Esdras. Didn't really put much precept together for this, because the video itself actually covers what I wanted covered, man. But this is second Esdras 6 and 7. I'll start 6 and 7. Then said I, slacker, then answered I and said, what shall be the parting asunder of the times, and when shall be the end of the first, and the beginning of it that followeth? And the end of the first is the end of this kingdom. The beginning is dealing with the kingdom to come, the kingdom of heaven. And he said unto me, from Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau. For Esau is the end of the world. Yeah, Esau is synonymous with the end. This is another way we know that we're at the end, because the kingdom that we're in is Esau's kingdom. It says, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. So when we see these things happening, yeah, we can be sure that we're coming to the end, And as it says, the devil, in Revelation 12 and 12, it says, having great wrath, it says, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he has but a short time. The time for this kingdom is running out, man. The Most High has set the bounds and a time for this place to go, and that's coming. And when we see these things happening, we can rest assured that we're literally at, knocking at the doors to the kingdom to come. Actually, I want to bring out one more. This is second Esdras, chapter 10. No, Sirach, actually. Sirach, chapter 10, and verse 4. Sirach 10 and 4, it says, the power of the earth is in the hand of the Lord. Because we have to remember that the Most High, he ruleth in the kingdom of men. He rules in the kingdom of men. It says the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, Proverbs 21 and 1. And he turneth it whithersoever he willeth, if we paraphrasing. So this is Sirach 10 and 4. The power of the earth is in the hand of the Lord, and in due time it will set over it one that is profitable. Yeah, that would be Jacob, the elect of Israel. Yeah, but like I said, we can see these things coming to pass now. It's up to you if you choose to stay asleep. That's your choice still. But for those who are awake, just keep persevering, man, enduring to the end. And yeah, Ratazar, we're part of that number. But with that, hopefully this was edifying. I'm going to close out. Give all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh, Bashem, Yahweh Shai, Rakar Kadash, Kwame Sha'Allah.